Julian, New York. You're on the Wilkow Majority. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I just heard you say not too long ago that the only way to interpret the Constitution is by reading from it. And that's not entirely true, because not only do you read from the text of the Constitution, but many of the times the text is ambiguous, and you have to look at the political debates behind it, how that clause was established, and look to the intent of the founders and framers to figure out how it applies to the world today.
No, that's not true. So what you're saying is, if the founders meant that free speech meant only petitioning the government for redress of grievances, because then that would mean that if the government decides to shut down a rock concert or a rap concert, you can't say First Amendment free expression. That's not what they meant. What you're saying is the government doesn't really need a warrant anymore because somebody just interpreted that as being so outdated.
Well, no. I mean, the warrant requirement's completely different. That has been expanded upon having 4 specific reasons why you would not need a warrant. I mean, the original intent behind the warrant is what it is. It's for the government not to go into your house without probable cause. And they have interpreted the warrant requirement.
Who are they? Who's they? Who's they?
The Supreme Court.
Now, you tell me, do me a favor, just tell me where in Article 3 of the United States Constitution the power to interpret the Constitution that created the court exists.
Listen, there's
don't. I'm not going to listen. You're going to tell me. No, hold on. I want you to tell me where there's an established power for the Supreme Court to reinterpret the Constitution.
It's not reinterpreting.
Yes, it is. The Supreme Court, sir. No, Julian, there is no power of the Supreme Court to interpret the Constitution.
It's power of
no. No, it doesn't exist. Judicial review is not in the Constitution, sir.
But judicial review is a part of,
Where did the courts get the power to grant themselves judicial review?
Judicial review came from Murray versus Madison.
Right, and what was the standing of the court to grant? The court granted themselves power, sir.
Without judicial review, how can one uphold the Constitution?
The only thing the Supreme Court was empowered to do by Article 3, Julian, you're not listening. Read the Constitution for yourself again. Case law precedent is the problem. The concept that the court empowered itself is the problem. It had no power to empower itself. The Supreme Court's original charge, if you read Article 3, is to strike down laws that are unconstitutional. They are only allowed to use the Constitution against future law. They are not allowed to reinterpret the Constitution.
Tell me how it's impossible to do that without using judicial review, and it's not reinterpreting the Constitution.
It is. If the Supreme Court, sir, you're wrong. Why is it then that liberals want to put another Supreme Court justice on the court that has a different view of the Second Amendment? How is it all of a sudden abortion is constitutional? Where is abortion mentioned in the Constitution or health care practices of any kind, sir?
Listen, liberals...
No, Julian, you are inventing powers the court does not have. And when the court... Okay, here's one for you, Julian. Internment. Is that constitutional?
Excuse me?
Internment.
I'm not familiar with internment.
You don't know what internment is?
No, what's internment?
Oh, my God. You really don't know?
No.
Okay, well, when you're ready to debate the big boy stuff, call me back. When you want to debate big boy stuff, let me know. What's internment? 1-866-95-PATRIOT. The Supreme Court said internment was entirely legal. Entirely legal. They also said segregation was entirely legal. They also said slavery was entirely legal. Sometimes the interpretation or reinterpretation doesn't go your way. That's why we don't trust anyone to interpret it. What's the point of having concrete law and an X factor? We're right, they're wrong. That's the end of the story. He must have attended a school that really loved FDR. Sirius XM Patriot.